So today what I want to do is talk about what I call the eviction war. So in our area, the eviction war has started. I saw an interesting news release yesterday, my wife pointed out to me, and in a city near us, they had 2 police officers were shot during an eviction. But the details of the story that were more interesting than what actually happened. Because what you found out when you got to the details of the story, which I found this morning, there was an apartment complex and multiple units were being evicted at one time. So what happened is this came through the court. Officers showed up to evict multiple units in the same apartment complex. So mass evictions are back on track now. And they had evicted several units prior to coming to the ones where they were shot. And when you think about this, I've been on both sides of the eviction process. When I was a kid, I worked for a real estate company, and I did the maintenance and operations and things like that on over 200 rental properties. I did that through high school and the first year of college. That was in the late 70s up to about 1981. And back then, nobody cared if you were a minor. And I was at several evictions of rental units, and I drilled the locks, or I used a hydraulic toolkit and spread the jamb of the door so we could open it. Occasionally, people would change the locks, and so you couldn't get in. They'd tear the place apart, and they'd be in there cussing out the cops and carrying on and so forth. So back in that day, it didn't go well once the cops actually got in. They usually take care of the people that were acting up and trashing the places versus people that, you know, took the eviction and went their way. Now on the other side of it, when I was young, I rented, and I had predatory landlords and I had good landlords, so I experienced both sides of that. Later on, during the foreclosure in 2008, 2009, I did some work for one of the banks where they were HUD customers. So on HUD repos, after the eviction had occurred, I would come along behind it and change the locks. And it's interesting, if you have a pickup truck, a hard hat, and a safety vest, you can basically open any house and nobody questions anything, because I opened quite a few that we didn't have keys for and replaced the locks with HUD locks. Now, what we can expect going forward is a lot of these mass evictions and mass foreclosures, because eventually landlords are going to have to be paid, because them not being paid is going to dump a whole lot of property on the banks, which banks don't want. And the same thing with foreclosures. If people don't start paying on their mortgages, the bank's going to take the property. And what will happen is, if we have mass foreclosures and mass evictions and mass foreclosures of rental properties as well as family homes, there'll be a glut of homes on the market, and the property will tank in value. Because what happens is, in order to get a bank loan, you have to have 3 comparables, which is real estate similar to yours that's sold in the last 6 months in the neighborhood that you're in. That way the bank can verify the value of the property and what they can get for it if they take it and sell it. So once you have 4 or 5 foreclosures in a neighborhood, the property value goes down to the sale price of those foreclosures. If this happens, it's a magnifying effect, because the property that's on bank balance sheets, if it's valued at market value instead of loan value, all of a sudden the banks have to have much more reserve, because the property that they're holding is worth so much less. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what's going to happen. We'll have a repeat, except it'll be worse than what happened in 2008, 2009. Now, what we can expect going forward is a lot of these mass evictions, where these large corporations, if they have one or more apartment complexes or rental units, they're going to go to court and they're going to try to evict everybody for the month at one time. And you're going to start seeing that happen all over the country. We just saw it start happening here. And you can expect a lot of violence when this happens, because statistically, if you look at it, if you have an apartment complex and you got 1,000 units and you're evicting 50 units today, it's very high probability that some of those units are going to be violent. The real question is, through the rate of attrition, will law enforcement be able to continue the eviction process if they're losing officers at a high rate? If so, I would imagine places like Blackwater, Z, and some of these other Merc outfits will start doing foreclosures on behalf of some of these large corporate landlords in lieu of police officers. So we'll have to see if the police can maintain the number of officers necessary for these evictions, or it's going to become a Merc operation. So please rate, comment, subscribe, share your thoughts, tell us what's going on in your area with foreclosures and evictions, and we'll see you on the next video.